Greetings, YouTube. I'm thinking I'd like to do a series of videos about the sketching that I used to do in the past. I don't sketch any longer. I realized that that was intimately tied into my watching television, because when I watched television, I sketched. I no longer watch television, and frankly, a lot of the ideas I had seem to have been played out. But I thought other people might find it interesting. Now, I have bound these up in folders, binders like this, and each is in a plastic or envelope with 2 pages per envelope, sleeve I should say. Yes, they are somewhat reflective, and I apologize for that, and some of the earlier ones are lighter, and I got darker as I went. I got a little better at that kind of thing, so they'll be a little clearer, and I apologize if there's any problem with clarity in these early pictures. And some of the ones I'll be showing off in the first, in fact, all the way up through, I don't know, here or so, I guess. These are all, first 30 pages are all from like the 80s and 90s. And then we get into things that are into the 21st century, where I picked up sketching again. I didn't do it for a long time. So here you go. We'll start with this first one, and this is not the actual first one I ever did, but it's the one I put in the first disc because frankly I find it makes a nice splash page. So we have something here I called a Trident of Power. I drew this strictly as an illustration for a magic item in a campaign I was running. And we have like little power stones up here in the striking head, and there's little power stones here, and there was a button that activated which stone was activated, told you what it did. No, I don't remember what it did. But there you go. It was really quite effective. It showed the players what they were using, and I even had little measurements down here, but it's trident shaped. So I don't think that's really 100% necessary for those measurements. Now we have a heavy-duty two-handed axe. This was a very large over-the-top axe. Very fantasy-oriented, obviously, because no axe would actually be this big. I mean, if it's like 80 centimeters by 76 centimeters by 2 meters. It's 2 meters from here to here. This is for a Gamma World campaign, if I'm not incorrect. One of the player characters had a very large axe, and this is the very large axe they used. And I didn't illustrate the wood grain here. This would have been wood grain. In later drawings, I actually do wood grain illustrations, but in these earlier ones, I didn't. And this is very emblematic of what I was doing in the 80s. I was doing multiple pictures per page, and they were very much my variations of D&D illustrations. And so we have like a battle axe and a pick maul and a double-bitted battle axe and mace, and some of these are fairly realistic, like this mace and this push dragger. Those are all in the realm of the real. This hammer right here, it's a little not realistic, but it's still fairly close to hammer shaped. Then we have some pole arms, and they are all, very much fantasy, realistically portrayed. That obviously is an over-the-top great axe. And you notice these are just shadowed. I just shaded these in. Again, I didn't use any wood grain. I do that when I get to the 21st century sketches. Here we have just a floor plan of a dungeon I used. Truck dock, so it was a modern era. Loading a lobby, so it was probably for some, I think that might have been for a Supers game, I'm not positive. And then actually that might have been Gamma World as well. And then we have a dagger, which was also part of the Gamma World campaign. It was the holy symbol of the Battle Master faith, a faith based around a Battle Master power mech. Because if a power mech isn't isn't from the gods, what is it? Then we have again another splash of early illustrations from the 80s and 90s. This is taken from a real-world concept, which was a staff that had a spear and side blades hidden in it. This is a real-world thing, though the side blades I think came out here. I think it popped out in a 30-some. We have an arm sheath, a dagger. We have kind of an early battle staff. Now, I use the term battle staff to describe any weapon that is two-ended, that has dissimilar ends. So this is a blunt striking weapon here, and this has a spearhead or a dagger blade with a crossbar. So it's very much like a wolf spear, a boar spear. And I have an entire collection of those in later illustrations. Here we have a flail, which actually comes together to become a great mace. It slips in here, locks in place, and it can function as a great mace. Yes, it would not be realistically strong, but this was a fantasy setting, so I was willing to bend the rules a little. Here we have Cincata. It's Spanish, but it's a wide 5-finger width blade here. Here we have some just different ideas I had for strike heads, like a space, 2 spheres. This is supposed to be an actual hawk head or raven head style mace, taken from, rather inspired from the Native Americans. Over the size mauls, again a hammer, a maul axe combo here, and this is something stolen from Talislanta, where each one of these was been a cube, and each cube had 4 spikes. The end piece had 5 spikes, and then you'd swing it like a whip kind of like thing. So it was very dangerous. I don't know if you can see my table mark, but there's some blue tape down here showing me where I'm supposed to be in frame. Then we had again some more illustrations of what the game I would be using my game. Like for example, I call this a bastard sword, and in actuality that's just a one-handed sword. It's not large enough to be a bastard sword, but I kind of like the illustration anyway. That's what I called it. Then we have a double crossbow, so it would be able to fire 2 separate bolts. This one for the lower and this one the larger one. Kind of the idea I think of this was supposed to be able to penetrate a wall and fire a line, a fantasy version of launching a line somewhere for climbing. And these were the built-in crankins that allowed you to actually to use it. I kind of like that idea. And we have a smaller one-handed version for firing of an anchoring stone. But let's be realistic, with the project this small, it wouldn't actually produce a whole lot of energy at all. And again, here we have another splash page where I was trying to again experimenting with ideas. For example, just a standard spear. This is kind of a European naginata design, where half blade, half handle. Small throwing axe, over the top, silly axe. I think that was inspired by a science fiction or fantasy movie I'd seen. Small throwing weapon, kind of looked like a trident. A blade and hook design. Kind of a trident here. An early kind of a glaive design. It's a silly looking dagger, and a very plain one-handed kind of an executioner sword, because it's got a square tip. Executioner swords would have been two-handed, not one-handed. And more splash things, a large trident. I was really into tridents at that time. Here's another trident with a blade. I think this was inspired by the comic Grendel. This was definitely inspired by Grendel, as was this. Kind of a 2 times blades with the dull edges on the inside and the edges, the backs to this way and the edges facing out. And the same thing here. Here we have a smaller throwing hand axe that actually had a cutout here. Here we have an asymmetric version where two different blade lengths on the same weapon, though I'm not sure what that would get. And a completely over-the-top Khopesh kind of a design on that one. And this is a very primitive looking partisan. And these are a little clearer here, I think, because I'm doing, again, I'm doing a little darker on than I was before. I'd gotten a little bit better here. We have kind of a spear and a hook designed for, or a glaive and a hook designed for trapping someone. And kind of a silly hammer, which has no definition, no depth. Saber. We have a small throwing axe. We have kind of a strange dagger. We have a sword, a little bit on the weird side. We have kind of a science fiction sword with a knuckle duster in here. And then we have a kind of a modern Gladys, and then we have a kind of a dagger in that page. So that'll wrap this one up, and then we'll go into another video.